And welcome back, everyone, to yet another edition of Going for Two, presented by our friends at Home Field Apparel. I am your host, the publisher of the Extra Points newsletter, Matt Brown. I am joined here, as always, by my colleague at D1 Ticker, Bryan Fischer. And we are recording this here on the afternoon of Thursday, the 18th. That you would expect we would want to talk about the Big Ten's new television deal. This is the major sports business off the field story that we've been going on right now, right? That's the reasonable expectation. That is a reasonable expectation. But here at Going for Two, and especially at Extra Points, we believe in counter programming. And also we believe in sticking to publishing schedules because there's a bunch of other things going on and it's hard to pivot. So we're not going to do that today. We're going to talk about the opposite of the Big Ten. We're going to talk about the SEC. We've been doing conference previews here. We're bringing in my old buddy from SB Nation. He's working on a bunch of projects with a bunch of my old buddies. Richard Johnson, he's been on this show here before. We're going to break down the SEC, what to expect for this season. If you want Big Ten new television deal news, you're in luck. I'm going to write about it for Extra Points. That Extra Points newsletter will be free. It will publish on Friday the 19th. So you can still have access to, what we were hearing from texting people and what this means for a bunch of other stuff. You're just going to have to read the words instead of having me read them to you. I hope that will be okay with you.
Yeah, we're just counter programming like the Puppy Bowl, Super Bowl. This is just the exact same thing. Only we're doing it with the reigning national champions and in the conference that loves to crow about football. So you know what, it'll be fun because in terms of intriguing storylines, we said this about some of the other conferences, but the SEC maybe have less, in terms of like real drama outside of Auburn, but like there's a lot of stories that you can kind of latch on to a lot of these teams, and that's kind of starts at the top with Alabama, consensus number one, and you can kind of go all the way down to the very bottom of the league with some interesting things that you can chat about.
Yeah, you always know in these previews we're going to talk about the worst team in the league, so there will be some Vanderbilt conversation, just like we talk about UConn, just like we talk about the dregs of other leagues. But we know who's going to win, probably. We probably know who's going to be at the bottom, but in the middle, there's a lot of interesting things. I just realized we barely talked about Georgia, the team that is the defending national champions. There's not a lot of Georgia talk on this show.
It's interesting because it seems like that's the kind of the case, kind of throughout kind of college football media going into the season. And if there is any chatter about Georgia, it's kind of focused on two things. It's how are they going to replace all these guys on defense, which, well, they have a whole new crop of 5 and 4 stars that have been waiting in the wings and played quite a bit last year in a lot of those blowouts. So they've got some seasoning as well. On top of that, like there's not questions about Stetson Bennett like there were, say, this time last year. So I feel like a lot of the questions have been asked and answered for Georgia, and they've kind of flown under the radar, which is weird because they could be not quite as good as they were last year overall as a team, but they could still end up with the same record. You never know. We kind of saw that with Alabama in terms of their rebuilding year, quote unquote, and we'll get into that with Richard here in a second.
Yeah, let's go bring him on here and let's make Richard answer for his crimes, saying that Alabama was rebuilding last year. Richard, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us. It's always nice to be able to have you on our show and to be able to chat on the air instead of just on the phone all the time.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. Listen, I want to talk about this season first. We were just talking off air about this, and I feel like it's important to remind our audience about it. On Split Zone Duo and across social media, you last year got a lot of attention by staking out a claim that this Alabama was Citrus Bowl bound. This like secret, this is a 2-loss Alabama team. This is not the Alabama team that we're that you would normally expect here. They made the championship game, but you and I were talking that spiritually anyway, you were right?
Yeah, spiritually, I was right. Now, look, it is an insane ode to Nick Saban's prowess in program building that he is able to turn what he called last week, verbatim, by the way, kind of a rebuilding year, his words, into essentially driving to score to tie the national championship game. I mean, like, remember, before Keely Ringo took that back to the house, it wasn't like they were getting blown out. But yes, that Alabama team was not the Alabama team that we were accustomed to seeing. I said they were going to lose two games. They didn't. They got so freaking close to doing so. If Florida would have ran a different play for a 2-point conversion, that game goes to overtime probably. The LSU game broke the very long streak of scoring 30 more points a game. LSU had an incredible defensive game plan in that game and really challenged Alabama. Obviously, the Auburn game went to overtime. There were multiple spots of vulnerability that Alabama team had, and if you watch that Alabama team from week 1 to the national championship game, again, hilarious to think that they made the national championship game and had a fighting chance to win it and had the Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah, I get it. People are going to look at the results and say you're crazy. That Alabama team was not the Alabama team that we had become accustomed to. It just wasn't. Again, it is a testament to what Nick Saban has built that you can have kind of a rebuilding year end the way it did.
Yeah, it's a rebuilding year insofar as somebody who's playing NCAA 14 has a rebuilding year, and so they allow themselves one loss and then still go win the national championship game. And by all accounts, this year's Alabama edition should have much more in common with the Alabama teams that maybe a casual fan is familiar with. So I don't want to talk about them yet because
they're getting back to the way business is supposed to be done.
Yeah, they're preseason number 1. Overwhelmingly for a reason. I want to talk about everybody else first. We can talk about Alabama later, but like rooting for the Death Star is boring. I want to know you as somebody who knows ball and knows this league very well. What are you most excited about? Not necessarily the best team, but the most interesting team and the most interesting storyline heading into this year.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 things that kind of pop out. I guess we can start in the East.
Sure.
You can start with Kentucky, the Will Levis thing, the Will Levis experience, whatever you want to call it. Kentucky is trying to purport themselves as kind of NFL light in the way that they play offense, which I know a lot of people may think is kind of surprising, but the scheme that Kentucky is running has roots in the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan system. They're they are trying to do that. I mean, I've literally talked to Mark Stoops about this. So they went and hired Liam Cohen from the Rams last year. He went back to the Rams as offensive coordinator. And now they have Rick Scangarello as offensive coordinator. And he comes from the 49ers. The interesting thing about it is Levis. And I've talked to some people on the NFL side who agree the arm is at an NFL level right now. The tape is not. NFL arm, not NFL tape. Okay, fair. He's got another year to figure it out. All of the hype that you're hearing and all that stuff comes from just people that have dug into him this year. It's funny. There's like a point in time when like everybody who scouted all the guys on Georgia's defense during the draft process, they got to the Kentucky game. And in the Kentucky game, Levis pops in the Kentucky game to an extent. Yeah. Remember, this is a defense that allowed 10 points per game. Like nobody did a lot against Georgia's defense last year besides Bryce Young. And so it's very funny that you know, if you're really looking with a fine-tooth comb, Levis popped in that game, even though obviously Kentucky did not win.
I want to flip over to the other side of the ball. So everybody knows you mentioned Bryce Young and probably his teammate who finished right behind him in the Heisman Trophy, and Will Anderson. Outside of those 2 guys, in terms of the defensive guys in across the SEC, who should somebody know that maybe he's not on their radar coming into the year, but will pop by the end of the year?
Well, you should probably know. You should probably know the guy on the other side of Will Anderson, yep. Dallas Turner, because Dallas Turner gives Alabama the ability to pin the ears back and rush the passer and do some decrepit stuff on the back end. And really, really bamboozle folks. I should have sort of finished the thought on East teams elsewhere in the East, and it's more offensive guys. South Carolina, Spencer Rattler is the drug I cannot quit. The arm talent is there. The NFL tape has been there in the past. If you're that kind of person, Spencer Rattler is incredible. And I think what Spencer Rattler can bring to South Carolina, if he's right, and there's a lot of people in and around that system that think that getting him out of kind of an air raid vibes offense and into more structure under center, fix his feet, all that kind of stuff, make him more on time, have him throw over the middle a little bit more, and do less kind of freelancing and creating. I think people think very highly of South Carolina and what Spencer Rattler could possibly give them. So I'm really looking for South Carolina to surprise some folks. Tennessee has become something of a darling. My SEC Network colleague Roman Harper said they're going to go 10-2. We had a spirited debate at the ESPN College Football Seminar earlier this week about that. Look, Tennessee's going to score a truckload of points. They are. That offense doesn't really have an off switch. But on defense, what is Tennessee going to be? And that is what I think is going to be really interesting for the Vols. That, if nothing else, Tennessee is going to be pretty entertaining. And there's points for that as the neutral observer.
Sure. I mean, it is a dumb question from a non-chalk person, but is the concern about Tennessee's offense and their system is that they're not really able to play complementary football, like the kind of North Carolina issue where you can score 40, but some of these guys can hang up 50?
Yeah, and that's a lot of what comes from. And that's not a Tennessee issue, you know what I mean? Like, again, like you mentioned North Carolina, like when you play that kind of high octane offense, it's difficult. It's difficult. But to answer Brian's question, which I should have done, obviously Jalen Carter, who a lot of people on Georgia thought may have honestly been better than Jordan Davis, at least as far as like a professional football prospect goes. Jalen Carter is incredible. I cannot wait to watch him do similar things to what Jordan Davis did last year on the inside. Auburn's going to be something, but I do think on defense, they got something. So what is Derek Hall going to bring for them on defense? Is he going to be good enough to kind of keep them? Bumper Pool at Arkansas, he's a guy to look for. He's in his, 9th year as playing college football.
You and I did Bumper Pool SEO stuff together at SB Nation.
100%.
I feel like.
100%. And then LSU's got a pair of interior defensive linemen. LSU, I think, is going to be one of the better defensive lines in the conference, if not the country.
You mentioned Auburn there, and is there going to be a referendum on the Tigers every single week of the season, win or lose?
Absolutely.
I'm trying to imagine what the best case scenario is for Auburn. I'm not even sure what Auburn wants to be on offense. I don't really understand a way where we're not perpetually Auburning every 2 weeks, right? Is there a pathway for some stability?
Yeah, the crazy thing about Auburn is it's, Brian, to your point, it doesn't even, there's no ramp. Let's say Jim Harbaugh came in this season on the hot seat. Just let's say that.
Could you imagine?
Go look at Michigan's schedule. There's no way Michigan doesn't start the season 5-0, right?
Yeah.
Auburn does not have that.
Yeah.
Auburn, there's a very plausible 2-2 start for Auburn through September. And obviously Penn State comes to town week 3. So there's no ramp up here. There's no to your point, Brian. Yeah, it really is going to be at a point where I think it's going to get week to week. October is also not kind to Auburn. Once they get, I think Georgia is the October 1st, something in there. October's not very kind to them either. So yeah, this is going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing every single week. And short of them, going 9-3, 10-2, I think we understand where this is probably headed with Auburn, unfortunately. And I do think we're going to have to slog through a season of it.
For those who are not having this conversation while having two different tabs open to FBS schedules, which is what I do every day in August. Assuming I have this correct, Auburn's does have opened the season with 5 straight home games, which is nice. You've got Mercer, which you should name your score. A sneaky, potentially decent San Jose State team, Penn State, Missouri, LSU. 3-2 sounds
3-2. Sorry, 3-2.
Not 2. I mean, honestly, you could see a world where worse than 3-2 is possible.
Absolutely,
3-2 definitely on the table. And then you have back-to-back road games against Georgia and Ole Miss. Not ideal.
Well, I'll throw this out there. Will we get a resolution on Alan Green, the AD? His contract's up in I believe, December, January, somewhere around there. Will we get a resolution on that first, and then Auburn will make a decision, or will this be the case where, hey, things go crazy given it being Auburn?
Yeah, I God, that situation. As far as athletic director Alan Green goes, I don't know. If I'm Alan Green, I think everybody knows the score here. you're in your last 6 months of an AD, 4 months of an AD contract. I think everybody knows the score here. For Allen Green, I think, rehoming, finding a different home is probably the way forward here. And the look forward here. I know Green has been in on other jobs over the last couple years.
We can confirm that too.
And been rumored for a few jobs. And maybe it wasn't the right time, or maybe it wasn't the right fit, but the clock is ticking on January, and I don't really see a true life raft for him, given how I expect this season to go.
Well, I want to talk about a different program that has very high expectations and has a reputation for booster extracurriculars. Not nearly in the same way as Auburn, but a often complicated situation nonetheless. I want to talk about Texas A&M. Preseason top 10 Texas A&M. Texas A&M with a outside GM budget fund, whatever you want to call it, that's right up there. It's basically the entire MLS. There's no question about resources. There's no question about expectations. And they have not achieved typically at the level of those expectations here in a while. And this is still a roster that has a couple of question marks. What do you think is a reasonable expectation for this A&M team? Is this a team that's ready to compete for a playoff spot, or is this a team that's ready to compete for a very nice January bowl game, or something? Are we making Jimbo Fisher jokes again?
No, I think with A&M, the goal is Atlanta. Now, it's going to be a tough road to hoe with what they've got October 5th, but the goal is Atlanta. If you're going to talk this talk, okay, show it. Now, they're replacing, I think, a little bit more than people may. You kind of can't really hand wave away what they're replacing. Yeah. But I do think you could feel confident in Jimbo's recruiting and development to stock that. I think we're going to learn a lot more, frankly, about Miami in that week 3 or 4 game that they play in College Station.
Week 3. Yeah, this is actually a sneaky, fascinating schedule for A&M. But yeah, Miami is coming to town.
I think we'll learn a lot more about Miami in that game, because I'm not too bullish on Miami's chances in that game, legitimately. Yeah. I think if I had to handicap it, probably 10, a little bit more than that, on the road for Miami. So I don't think you're going to learn a ton about A&M, but I personally think it's going to be the same thing it was last year, where we're talking about, do you have a quarterback or not? It's pretty much all we're concerned with. Because they have a quarterback, you can obviously paper over some of the things that need to get in shape before October. They play Bama October 8th, excuse me. Yeah. Before October 8th comes around. Yes, it's just A&M is interesting. A&M is, I do not think playoff ready, but I do think the proof's got to be in the pudding here as far as this 8-4, 9-3 stuff.
The other games on the A&M schedule, they're opening with one of the premier FCS teams in the country, Sam Houston, which is, they're going to win by a lot, but whenever you play one of the good FCS teams.
Technically FBS now. So
is it this season? Because they're still playing a mostly
one of those transition teams, but I believe letter of the law, they're technically an FBS team now.
So okay. I
think that's stolen valor. That's stolen FBS valor.
Yeah, they're still at probably what, 70 scholarships. They might be over 65, but
they're playing a tweener. They're playing a gentrified FCS team for this season. I say that with love, right? You got App State, who should be good. I don't know about beat A&M and Kyle Field good, but good enough to make A&M fans cuss at their television in the third quarter good, I think. You got Miami, and then you have UMass at the end of the season if you want to see a dead body, which is their version of SoCon Saturday. But you should get to see A&M sweat a little bit before that Alabama game, or demonstrate what they really have on offense. It's been a minute since we've had Jimbo Fisher's had a quarterback. He's had the quarterback recruits. Quarterback, different thing.
The back half of October can get difficult for them too, depending on what South Carolina is going to be this season. Yeah. That could be a sneaky, interesting game. And then, the point about the quarterback thing is interesting. And the point about Jimbo to me is very interesting. What have you done to this offense to adapt it to make it a little bit more quarterback friendly. These are not professionals who are, on time over the middle at all costs. That was Jameis. I don't have that right now. Haven't had that in a little bit. I do think he's probably brought things a little bit down to earth. I think he's probably a little bit less reticent to run the quarterback than he was in the past. He's evolved. But yeah, who's going to play quarterback for them and who's going to play it at the level that they need?
Yeah. What about defense for the Aggies? Because I think that is also an intriguing side of the ball. Just you have DJ Durkin coming in, somebody who's familiar with the league. But I think everybody's saying, can that unit kind of carry them certainly through that early part of the schedule until they can not only find the guy at quarterback, but really find the guy that can elevate them on offense. Is the defense up to the task with DJ Durkin coming in?
Yeah, I think so. Just because of the talent they've got, a lot of the talent comes from the back end, right? With A&M. I think with A&M, you're hoping now. I remember the fallout from the Anais Smith situation on offense. Excuse me, because that escapes me. But you've got McKinley Jackson up front. Okay, you've got Antonio Johnson on the back end, and you've got guys that I think you feel good about on the secondary for A&M. So. With that being said, I think there's an assumption about what A&M is on the lines of scrimmage and up the middle that I think is carrying a lot of the perception about them, right? They're big, they're strong, they're building it up the middle in the trenches the way you're supposed to do it. What they may have at skill position and or quarterback remains to be seen. But what they have, where it kind of matters, where it kind of counts, especially in the SEC, I think you feel good about.
There's two other examples, I think, of where popular expectation might not meet immediate roster composition. And it's one thing to talk about those programs, about what they might look like in 3 years. Those are fascinating thought exercises, but that's different from what they look like right now. And I want to start with one that's, of course, near and dear to your heart: Florida Gators.
Who?
Florida Gators.
Sorry.
Yeah, they're allegedly never heard of them. Seem to have a quarterback.
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. We can talk about that. Like when I think of Florida over this offseason, I think, okay, they hired 700 people and their message board community absolutely pooped their pants in May over recruiting. And now that looks much better now. But what this team could potentially be this season, buttressed from reinforcements from Lafayette and kind of rearranging parts, that seems to be an open question. Like it is kind of surprising to me to go into the beginning of the season and think, they're probably going to lose to Utah, which did not seem like a likely thing when that game was scheduled, right?
Florida has probably the worst first two games. Because, look, if Ohio State came into Gainesville and they played Ohio State and they lost to Ohio State, people, I think you can rationalize and say it's Billy's first year. They don't have the talent. Ohio State's the best team in the country. Fine. Dandy. Utah is going to come into that stadium and attempt to drag you to hell with them. And they're going to make it hurt. And it's not going to be fun. And it's going to be 23-16 with like 2 touchdowns in the second half. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to be an aesthetically pleasing game.
And it's going to be like 300 degrees.
And it's going to be unbelievable. It's at night and it's going to be hot as hell.
Yeah. Trust me. Smell.
So I think the thing with Florida this year is I am a pump the brakes on Anthony Richardson person. Okay. I think if you drew a quarterback up in a lab, they don't look much better than Anthony Richardson. I get it. Anthony Richardson has completed 39 passes in his career. Let's relax. The deep arm strength is there.
Yeah.
It's a pretty ball. But there is more to being a quarterback than that. Let's see it. Let's give it a second before we pencil him in to the first round. It's a little bit like the Will Levis thing. Let's give it a second here. The arm talent is there. The physical tools are there. No question. But let's give it a second. But yeah, I think a lot of what Florida's doing is a longer term build than people realize. It just is. And when you're chasing what they're chasing, which is up the road in Athens, it does not change overnight. It does not happen overnight when you're trying to chase those teams. And when you hire 1 million people, when you beef up support staff, all that when you finally get a legitimate indoor football only facility, which they just unveiled about a week ago. When you finally get those things and like a lot of what Florida's doing right now isn't necessarily kicking on into the sixth gear. It's getting up to speed with everybody else in the station of the sport that Florida purports itself to be.
Yeah. No, you and I have talked about this. I know you talked about this on your show a lot there too. The goal is to win national championships, and the program sees itself as one that has this potential. But the infrastructure, both physical infrastructure, personnel infrastructure, cultural infrastructure, all of that stuff had not kept up with the Joneses, and then suddenly you're recruiting in the 18s rather than the 2s, and in this division that matches up. The other example, and of course the one that's going to be tied to the hip for Florida in a lot of these conversations over the next couple of years, is LSU, who looks like they made a somewhat surprising decision at quarterback, and also have a couple of roster question marks. A challenge. I totally forgot they're playing Florida State, like the beginning of the year. Like that's like the one.
You could tell me anything is going to happen in that game. Anything is going to happen in that game.
I've come around to thinking almost anything can happen with this season, right? Yeah. Like Brian Kelly knows ball. Could they come around and potentially go 10-2? Like that seems possible if they hit on everything at QB. Could there be a locker room revolt and cultural issues, and they get a little bit unlucky and go 5-7? Like that doesn't seem impossible either. Where do you see not future LSU, but like immediate LSU for this year?
Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. This is a safe space to say that.
I
know all the time.
I have absolutely no idea what LSU is going to be. I have no bearing for it. I don't know. LSU is more than anything. Okay, let's wait and see. Okay. I don't know. Yeah. Roll it out there and let's figure it out. Let's figure it out on the fly, which I think they will be. I think LSU probably has as good a chance as anybody to be a way better in November than in September team.
Sure. I think they'll need to be, because that November is hellish.
Yeah. I know you didn't, I know we're not talking about the future, but like I'm very bullish on Brian Kelly in the future.
Okay.
I just am. But yeah, I don't know, man. The range of outcomes for LSU seems so wide, just so wide this season.
It's an interesting time too, because you have LSU kind of rebooting and bringing Brian Kelly in and changing a lot of things off the field as well. You mentioned the new facilities. I mean, that more than anything, bringing them up to par. Had some resets recently, kind of across the SEC. Obviously, chasing Alabama and Georgia. Who's going to get the closest long term? We've talked about this upcoming season. Who in your mind though is really providing that base to truly challenge kind of the top two in the league long term?
I think A&M because of the money, because of how they're building it. A&M is as good a bet as any. Long term, I look at LSU and I say, all right, because of what I think of Brian Kelly. Now, my problem with Brian Kelly is he going to try to Notre Dame it in the sense of coach up 4 and 4.5 stars to try to beat and compete with 5 stars? Because I've watched that song and dance happen in Gainesville, Florida for the last 10 years. I can tell you how that ends. And it doesn't matter how good a coach is. I think the world of Dan Mullen as an X's and O's offensive coordinator, offensive play caller, and yet. So I wonder that's the long-term wonder for me in LSU. The long-term wonder is recruiting wise. Are they going to do business the way it's supposed to be done in this league? Or are they going to try to maximize very good instead of great/elite?
Speaking of the way that business is supposed to be done in this league, this is a league where you have haves that are dropping lots of money and have gigantic history and tradition. You have some that are not. Is there any reason for a casual fan to care at all about anything that happens with Vanderbilt or Missouri or any of the other proverbial dregs of this conference? Is there something personnel wise or storyline wise that you're interested in?
Yeah, I think the Mississippis are going to be interesting. Especially Mississippi State. This is like year 3 Mike Leach type thing. And look, you say what you want about Mike Leach. This shit works, man. It just does. It just has. Okay. All right. It's year 3. Let's figure it out. I think that, I think that as far as the bottom of the league is concerned, you've got a level of parity in the SEC from like 3 to 10, maybe 3 to 12 even, that I don't think the league has had in a little bit. You can tell me anybody is going to finish in any order, and I'd be like, all right, cool. Like, I can see it. So I don't know how Missouri and Vanderbilt factor into that, because those are the two sitting at the bottom that is just, it's not looking great. I think Vanderbilt has an over-under of 2.5. I would take the over there, frankly. But 2.5 is not awesome, especially after you lose your best offensive lineman probably to Alabama. It's not great.
Friends, do we know where, off the top of our head, where Vanderbilt opens the season?
Hawaii,
yeah.
That's right. And
open at Hawaii, they play, I believe, Northern Illinois also in the non-con.
Yeah, on the road in both places. Maybe I should go to that.
That Northern Illinois game is not for the faint of heart, the way Northern Illinois runs the ball. I can tell you that right now.
Okay, I should go to that then.
You might want to when if they topple an SEC power. Well, an
SEC budget.
An SEC budget. Well, even that. So yeah. As for what the bottom of the league is going to be, I'm curious how far the parity really does extend when we get into it.
Yeah, I mean, on paper it seems like Alabama probably the best team, Vanderbilt probably the worst team,
Missouri probably second worst. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to throw 6 through 9, 6 through 10 in a Yahtzee cup and spin it around, yeah, I mean, that all seems, any order there seems reasonable to me.
I mean, is Ole Miss in particular kind of one of the highest ceiling, lowest floors of that group? Just given all that Lane Kiffin has brought in, obviously new quarterback transfers all over the place, some new coordinators. Like, I mean, it feels like of all the kind of chaos teams out there in the SEC, Ole Miss might be one of the ones that you might put top of the list, right?
Yeah, I'm weary of all that stuff coming in. Honestly, a lot of change.
Yeah.
Jeff Lebby gone, Matt Corral gone. Elijah Moore gone. Like, I'm worried about that. I think when you get too transfery, I don't know. It's transfers are never a long-term harbinger of success. They're usually a Band-Aid. So I don't know. I'm a little curious about Ole Miss this year. Not exactly bullish.
Somebody does have to lose these games.
Wait, that's the other thing. Somebody's got to be bad.
Yeah.
And it may be you're losing a lot of one-score games. It may be things swing back the other way. Arkansas, somebody's got to not be great in this division or in this league.
Yeah, and you can be not great and fun. I imagine. I mean, to your Tennessee example, I imagine I'm going to enjoy watching Ole Miss. I have enjoyed watching them play the past couple of years because they have played to me in a very aesthetically pleasing kind of dumb football. Where even though that defense has gotten better, will there be big plays and lots of points? Yes. Could I see something I've never seen before when watching this game? Yes. Is this a game where fans will throw a new kind of object onto the field? Will there be 40-yard chunk plays in either direction? Yes. And will it ultimately matter for the national championship? No. Perfect. Low stakes, dumb bullshit. I love it. Like I'm happy to watch lots of Ole Miss football this year.
Yeah, no, be chaos. Be chaos.
Yeah, the platonic ideal of a good college football game, in my opinion. Are there any, just to shift away from the players here for a second, are there any coaches other than the Bryan Harsin-Auburn situation that you're looking at and think like something needs to change here on the field or off the field, or changes will be made for them? Is there a job that people should be monitoring?
No, I think,
okay.
Absent of the surprise head to the NFL, I kind of think we got some labor peace in the SEC this year, and oh my God, is that going to backfire on me in 2.5 months? But I kind of am projecting relative labor peace in the SEC.
From the man who said Alabama was going to go to the Fischer Bowl. You hear it here, folks. No. Well, you can't fire a coach every other year anyway. If you got some new people or people still on year 2 or their contract or not where you can necessarily buy them out, then
I do think I mean, if Missouri goes like 0-12, I think maybe we're having a conversation. But I kind of think that even if they're just like garden variety bad, it's probably a wait till next year situation. That's the only one I'm kind of looking at there. Then again, there is always going to be movement. I mean, there's always going to be movement we can't predict. There's always going to be somebody's going to go to the NFL out of nowhere or whatever.
Sure.
I'm definitely holding out, that as a possibility because that can definitely happen. But as far as straight firings, it's kind of looking like labor peace.
Love to see it. Do you have anything else, Bryan?
No, not well. I guess the only thing that I can think of, just because we're talking in the wake of the Big Ten deals being announced and the billions that are flowing in to the schools up north, and I'm curious, what is the SEC reaction, not just to that, but knowing that they are not number one in terms of that taking. We'll see. Certainly, when Oklahoma and Texas come into the league officially, what kind of sweeteners ESPN is going to throw in on that. I'm not saying you need to speak ill of your employer right now, but in terms of the kind of SEC response, I know there's a few folks around the league that are just biding the time, and they do think some increases are coming, but it's not like the SEC already enjoys that big gap compared to everybody else. I'm just kind of curious how you think they're going to react to all this talk. This offseason has been about the Big Ten and how they're going to take that going into this actual college football season.
I think the first lever that you pull, 9 conference games. Do it. Enough already. Enough. The second lever that you pull, and this is my conspiracy theory, I don't care. This is unfounded. Everybody that I've spoken to up until this week says it's not going to happen. Oklahoma and Texas are not playing football in the Big 12 after 2023. I don't care. All right? I do not care. Figure it out. Find a way. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money now, and not even just it's a lot of money where you kind of roll your eyes. No, it's a lot of money for them to leave. All right. It is
multiple commas.
It is a non-trivial amount for those schools to leave. But 9 conference games, Oklahoma and Texas in the league earlier than you may think. With the ABC prime time, I imagine ESPN would probably have to help grease some sort of wheel some way to make this happen. I just cannot see it. I can't see this taking that long, especially when I think the SEC has taken this time to sit back and look at what the Big Ten is going to do and then counter. How do you counter? You've got 2 aces in the hole, I think, to really improve your plight quickly and really make things pretty sexy as far as the press release is concerned really quickly.
I mean, how well do you think Oklahoma and Texas are prepared for the league? Not whether they come in next year or the year after. I mean, how prepared are they as a program for what they're going to face week in, week out in the SEC? I
am not sure because I don't know how well either are prepared this season, and I want to wait until after this season to answer the question.
Fair.
I don't. I'm not going to say it's not a leap. It is obviously a leap to deal with the likes of Alabama and Georgia on, I don't know, a week-to-week basis. Lord knows how they're going to do the schedule. Probably some kind of pods or stolen valor pods that they're not going to call pods because they don't want to
guide for the 16-team SEC schedule.
Right. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I don't think this is where I need to see Texas, because I want to say I don't think Texas is going to come in as a 7-5 program because I think Texas is going to be a little bit better this season, but I need to see it. I need to see it over there before I try to project what's coming in.
That's fair enough. Richard, where can people find you talk about the SEC this year?
I will be back with Spencer Hall. I'm thinking out loud Monday, September 4th, 7 p.m. is our first show. And we run during the season on Monday nights at 7 Eastern. Thinking out loud, I am on podcast Split Zone Duo with friends of the program, Alex Kirshner and Stephen Godfrey. We are also sponsored by the fine folks at Home Field Apparel. And then I am in the digital pages, I guess, of Sports Illustrated. And I'm writing over at Sports Illustrated.
And physical pages too. They still make a couple.
They do.
Yeah, your name's in there. So it's always good to talk to you, man. Thanks so much for taking a little bit of time. We'll catch up with you more this season for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Friends, I hope you've enjoyed all this conversation here about the SEC. It's an interesting conference. Got lots of big brands, lots of compelling organizational storylines, whether you're a big football fan or not. But real quick, I do want to talk about something that has nothing to do with the SEC. I want to talk about the Bucks. I want to talk about the Bucks that are now part of our partners at Home Field Apparel. If you watch this on the video, I'm probably not supposed to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm wearing one of the shirts right now. It says, "Because I couldn't go for 3." which is the least problematic thing that Woody Hayes ever said. I feel like an important sentiment to wear for this show called Going for Two. This is when Woody Hayes memorably went for two after beating the ever-living shit out of Michigan. When asked why, it was because he couldn't go for three. Going for Three will be our extra show that we will debut on Peacock in the next year or two, so we can get part of this ridiculous Big Ten contract. But Home Field, of course, makes officially licensed, extremely comfortable, unique vintage collegiate apparel for almost every program, big programs, small programs. But they have not had my alma mater, which just happens to be arguably the biggest brand in all of college athletics. Well, that collection debuts this Saturday. I have 3 of those shirts here. I'm wearing one of them. There's 2 other ones here in my office that I can't share because I don't want to get hauled off to Home Field jail. But one of them is black and red and says, because I couldn't go for 3. It's a great collection. And if you buy Ohio State stuff there, one, you help Ohio State show up as number 1 on the big new Saturday sales rankings, which is a deeply important metric for lots of reasons. Penn State is currently number 1. You get us money, which we then use to sometimes buy more Home Field stuff, and also sometimes to buy things like microphones or Lunchables or diapers. And you help Home Field get money. And we like Home Field because they make fun things. So you should buy stuff. Ideally Ohio State stuff, but it doesn't have to be. If you want to buy Florida Gators gear, or if you want to buy a t-shirt of a Georgia Bulldog playing golf, you can do this.
I almost wore that today.
You almost wore that.
I went with the Zanum Sark shirt, for SEC, but I almost went with the reigning national champions. But that is actually one in my collection, and had some Georgia alums by the house a couple days ago, and so it's in the wash. But yeah, some great collections in the SEC and the Big Ten and beyond. But yeah, going to be interesting to see those sales charts on Saturday when the OSU collection goes official. And we know how big the fan base is. They like to crow. They're one of the biggest fan bases, if not the biggest, in all of college football. Well, we will put that to the test on Saturday and beyond.
If Ohio State fans do not buy a bunch of t-shirts for our friends who sponsor the show, will it send me personally into an existential crisis? I'm not saying it won't. So when you buy that stuff, use promo code EXTRAPOINTS to save 15% off of your order. That is extra points at homefieldapparel.com. We are going to be wrapping up our preview series in the very near future. We have a conversation scheduled that will drop soon on a FCS football preview. We are going to go from the biggest brands to some that are less big. We'll have the ACC to wrap this up early next week. Like we had teased before, we have multiple newsletters this week on the Big Ten's gigantic new television contract, what this means for consumers, what this means for basketball, both men's and women's, Olympic sports, the future of text and digital media, and many more. You can find all of that at Extra Points MB. We also have a couple other tidbits in there about Division II television deals, because by God, I am nothing if not perpetually on brand. Bryan, what have you been up to this week that people need to make sure that they see?
Well, there have been quite a few conversations on Collegiate Sports Connect about this Big Ten deal with market analysts and whatnot. Some other conversations as well from some of our colleagues talking to athletic trainers and all that they're going through nowadays, given burnout in that industry, what they're facing going into this upcoming season. So a lot going on in terms of the diverse nature of conversations throughout college athletics on Collegiate Sports Connect. And as usual, whether it's details about the Big Ten deal, reactions around college sports, to everything, you can find that all at D1 Ticker, which is a great resource, whether you're in the industry or you're even just a fan that wants to kind of follow along with an extra critical eye on all that is going on.
It is the first email I read every morning. Last quick thing. I don't think I've plugged it on this show before, but we are super excited. At least I'm super excited. I think Brian's probably just regular excited, but I'm really fired up about this. New product we're debuting here called D1 Classroom. That packages cheapo subscriptions to Extra Points, access to Collegiate Sports Connect, so you can help your students actually find jobs in this field, and also get to see all of the interviews that Bryan and I are doing, and then also some discussion questions about what's happening in the news, both stuff that I've been publishing, our peers have been publishing, elsewhere in this company been publishing, because we know that we have a lot of instructors that listen to this, and God knows that you're overworked. You probably are teaching 3 or 4 course loads, finding textbooks for sports management, sports business, sports media is really difficult. They're very expensive. D1 Classroom is super cheap. It's $4 a month per student. If you would like some more information Drop me a note at matt@extrapointsmb.com. We also do bulk subscriptions and share some of this stuff for any organization that wants a bunch of subscriptions. So we've actually done this with newsrooms, and we have done this with conferences. I can think of, I think we have 2 conferences right now that have bulk Extra Point subscription options here. So if your office wants a bunch of access, or your athletic department wants a bunch, I got you covered. Don't pay full price. Friends, this has been wonderful. It's been a very busy week. We're going to have some very busy weeks coming up soon. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for reading and watching us wherever we are. We'll see you again very soon on the internet.